Their presidents Trump, President Obama, President Trump, and President Biden. Yet everyone fails when they speak for the law, for example, or Martin Luther King. Because the law doesn't speak through. The law and nature has what is grouped as exceptions in exception nature, only in demonstration of the same thing, of hyper-exception nature. For example, to define, equaling that which is the distinct identity of simultaneous nature, they are non-distinctly simultaneously, hyper-simultaneously. The three individual, grouped, and species body of volumes, where and how they are one identity of hyper-simultaneous nature, that is positive or negative to itself, the way we know, the ways we know, and the ways, is further positive or negative to itself. So, for example, criminal insidiousness is manifest. Criminal insidious natures like wrongdoers are manifest. Note which all the colonists A through Z were wrongdoers. And Native Americans against Native Americans. Wrongdoers against themselves because as victims. But it's not A or B. It's not and where and how that was, exceptions, those were valued, put there to replace the natural conversation of the natural science /S. The science is sharing identity, this hyper-simultaneous nature, tied to our quality of fact-achieving nature. So what they didn't do, they pretend it's personal from kids that are in other classrooms, that offensively took roles with illusions and databases, pretending people had, they're putting fake instances. Even when they put real instances, they're attaching fake things to it, and they're hiding sequence shifts increasingly. So they're making more and more people through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, as victims at each age, needing to self-value being victims. Too, because juxtaposed were all kinds of natures, motivation, needs of interest, positive and negative treatments, theory treatments that are juxtaposed with delusions, and as behaviors that are with premises treatments that can't defend themselves without hurting other people, or without valuing means and ways to hurt other people provided right there for them. What most furthers and effectively used and uses things like fentanyl and phrases like white supremacy. It effectively measures and maintains a breaching method, one method, blamed on other things, others, and or on selves. And that being and having been sustained already has manifest all identity grounds, locations, with and as conduit, for example, so to speak, where and how we are our values /value progression. Increasingly instances, increasingly identities, increasing memories, fact treatments, quality of fact treatment nature abridged. Our founders left us to discern how they did not have free speech and how they had to force entertain political narratives relative to where and how and why the three branches of government and the exceptions of exception nature differentially, constantly, increasingly them too. And that's including American citizens. And so I see stories about how and why people don't help each other in cities, for example. I don't know where they go. They fly by. People see it, people don't. But in other words, the reason they don't help each other too is tied to this. because they're the same ones involved with the narratives with race. In other words, there are increasing ways to discern how all race treatments are effectively being and having been used by the breaching method, self-value by everyone that doesn't want that, but self-value through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, for the effectiveness of the method from off campuses, collusion with that which no one realized, progressed between Native Americans A through Z. It was already between the countries that were going to collude, and they didn't even want to. They were fighting with themselves. That's why England and Spain and France and Spain were entrenched with slavery too. In Africa, they separate that out because it doesn't collude with the logic at the locations levels. So they have black families I don't know the names of consciously, and they mixed it with locations next to it has something to do with 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike with offensive evidence perception, worse than war crimes, racketeering, we'll call it, and identity theft / fraud. Free speech and correlation simultaneously inherent, active, and progressive means include increasing means and needs to demonstrate how treatments of black rights by everyone and of white rights or white supremacy by everyone effectively, increasingly self-valued, criminally foreign influenced treatments of that, and leaving out the collusion, because this is a criminal re-engineering of what nature revealed, while everyone was being led by what's really going to cause positive value nature progressions or negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, rather than positive value nature progressions, acts and natures, and means out of nowhere, including especially regarding where and how we are quality as fact treatment nature. Anyone who wants to pretend passions and emotions by sciences, pretend they don't realize the significance of it. For example, though, they have black people interbranch and white with the white power, the KKK themed, involved with police forms and their promotions of themselves through intercities through time. As the inclusion with the people that run the prisons and their family members. Now, so when they have these debates, the news, they have the family members of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the interbranch ones, still. Self-valued, criminally foreign influenced, originally in still so many ways. And then they pretend it's all either the A or B. You're talking good or bad about the thing. They make the locations, areas, and states have to say bad things about leaders because they're measuring and maintaining states only capable of lifting, locations, areas, and states only capable of lifting people up, or are going to speak about, but blame things like self-value, blame things like white supremacy, which is an affront to the Native Americans too. No, you don't mean that. When you guys even entertain what you entertain when you fight with each other. The Democrats, the Republicans, and the exception nature increasingly, just like the fake positive, breaching method employed, positive value nature progressions that were criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments, inclusion with negative, with the cause of, and with the maintenance of, blamed on other things, propagated and self-cultivated other motivations, natures, needs, interests to self-value locations, areas, and states, and sciences, criminally foreign influence, blamed on others, because everyone's increasingly naive and they pretend, but what's your research when they're arguing? Or increasingly how the research was criminally foreign influenced and self-valued that way as victims, but as victim predators. Pretend when, where, and how it counts. where how the interbranch force sequence shifts not used by free speech, or they'll steal our speech. NBC Connecticut News has wire crimes rolls with WFSB, with their phones and with fake stories, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Then they have, and with the FBI in their defendant capacities and since, leading up to that, in their defendant capacities and since, with federal criminals and other cases associated with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people associated with a case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death, involved with predicate acts against me leading up to that and since. As people I found out were involved with a pattern of, since leading up to the Trade Center since I was a kid, and with tied confessions about other things tied to the trade. And then in that context, /S interstates have included, after having been rolls with little identity thefts and frauds instances in years earlier, connected, and uses of that. See, this is where people are pretending passions and emotion, and they're pretending the interbranch are pretending. We have to talk about how the interbranch, the foreign and the military, foreign and domestic here too, involved with identity thefts, frauds, pretending passions and emotions as people I don't even know, and as people juxtaposed with people I only know recorded themselves, seeking me out to make confessions, demonstrate, lock themselves into locations, and collusion with people from the other classes in my grammar school, with uses of mayor's kids through time, even uses of the extended family members of Congressman Larson. These aren't things that Congressman Larson wants to be involved with. The real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures in Hartford, Connecticut, and in Wethersfield, sickly, distinctly. Forget about just the shootings add up over the past 30 years. Over the past, how many streets are in Hartford? How many people got shot? And that was just one instance into a value/value progression, though. How many other bad things happened? How many things were out of the city? The people from Hartford got shot because of things. It's intercities. Same causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures, rolls with it with the identity thefts and frauds clicks, and instances where they pretended that they had to hide. And that's increasingly relevant to and as their roles with increasing amounts of falsified police reports, and roles with them self-valued increasingly, because where and how they fight about sanctions and peaceful means to counter things that are going to end everything, like war, or like war now. In other words, war when they don't even have revolution to define. War when we still have psychology, psychiatry involved with medicines, crimes, medical racketeering, right through wars. All kinds of roles with the racketeering, even the prisons tied to, and on off the state prison offices, on off Connecticut judicial branch offices, people associated with offensive identity thefts and frauds, also in the form of evidence reception racketeering. Investigators used to keep things blamed on others themselves. And as their collusion, like for example, West Hartford, New Britain, through time with the people from Wethersfield campuses, child campuses, where they use other people's names, where they use their own names and titles and other people's names and titles. And at locations online, and with phone crime methods that are bringing to courts that they're criminally foreign influence courts. They're fabricating audio and video in collusion with what happens at locations. They've been setting up fake arrays and pretending they're doing things to test people or whatever. In other words, the parents and other people that kids know the names of, and people they don't know the names of, they are demonstrated to where and how there are instances where they are brought before the principal. A lot of it's not even on the records, and then they go back to their class. and it has some things to do with how they mix themselves with plainclothes police officers and their acting coaches. So there are houses on Church Street, Weathersfield, that are recorded, confessed, demonstrated involved with people also on my street with Weathersfield police confessions over the last 7, 8 months. And before that, but right before the pandemic too, online and on Facebook, and with the court's uses of Facebook for juxtaposed natures of passion crimes as federal crimes, wire crimes, falsified police reports, rolls, sexual and medical abuses, and judicial abuses of little kids. Identity thefts and frauds, because they've been attaching everyone to fake words with themselves and with others. Fake sequence relationships to themselves and others. Fake natures of relationships to themselves and others. There's also a Joshua Julian, who's also involved with fact-cheap nature predicate acts, with child sex offenders, with the Weathersfield Police Department through time, and with the courts involved with them criminally. Weathersfield interbranch, there's only 3 branches of government. They're also recorded offensively torturing and hurting people by pretending they had conversation with them. For example, pretending people are saying everybody else is bad. Naive quality of time treatments used simultaneously, too fast, too slow to get over on people. I've been asking for a response in paper since before the World Trade Center attack regarding the confessions for the people then in the World Trade Center attack demonstrated to me were involved with as names with involved with the confessions. And then they involved them intercities with the timed confessions and predicate acts against me. There's a Spada family who's involved with identity thefts and frauds, with Hartford Police and with Weathersfield Police, attaching me to fake locations, fake relationships to themselves, fake natures of relationships to other people. There's a Fred Grisey I never saw around my neighbors, who is one of the people who went to private schools, who's one of the strangers that I know just from instances. He's involved with recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with identity thefts and frauds and falsified police reports and juxtaposed natures of federal crimes, including with foreign and domestic medical cliques and overt criminal enterprises involved with sexual and judicial crimes. Also because they have doctors involved with courts and within East Hartford locations. They even have the governors being lied to and or lying with them. And with, as is recorded, NBC attached me to fake emails and a whole bunch of people with Weathersfield Police Chief and his daughter I never met as one of the ones with my own family members on and off places in downtown Hartford involved with investigators who are criminally foreign influenced and on and off Town Line Drive locations with them through time, on and off that shopping center and locations next to it. And this is with military, foreign, and domestic. They're involved with sequence shifts, falsified police reports, and uses of identity in the ground locations, which are tied to where and how they were attaching me to fake ties to other people, fake natures, and they were trying to film fake things. That's why they can't put things on paper, because they recorded themselves at locations, involvements with the worst natures of crimes and criminals, and then uses of them afterwards to hide lives because of how they were kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, final act of progressive lies, naive treatments of other people's names they don't even know, and all exceptions, exception nature, demonstration, the same thing. It shows where and how there's a pattern of people that try to imply that they know others, and they have real motivations, needs, interests, but those are juxtaposed. Those aren't the ones that are the subject. They're forcing themselves into conversations with other people online too. So Weathersfield Police Department has their Facebook page, involved also with Hartford, New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, and people that work for them, male and female, and their family members and their kids. That's how they have their kids. That's one of the reasons That's one of the ways from off campuses they already had maintained effectively self-valued criminally foreign influence uses of campuses, overt / insidious. Now, their treatments of this at legal levels, like they're routine, oh, we have the right to do this, we have the right to treat the attacks on the Capitol the way they want. They're using it to hide their sequence shifts, their roles with the predicate acts of the news that is allowed to, other people are allowed to report on what other reporters report. Now, these are also people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with uses of the locations next to the media locations that are involved with the fact-cheating nature predicate acts with them. If you call them on the phone, they are influenced by the interbranch, where they are where they are victims, but they are victim predators because then they can't defend themselves. But they already did this, so they're criminally foreign influenced, and their delusions wrought. So their natures of behavior treatments and pretending others are, and needing to, that are increasingly self-valuing also how all the different jobs at the courts through time and uses of them since they were kids was affected by the databases side of the exploited off campuses, on campuses, and the locations next to it. Also, there were a whole bunch of people with Harvard Hospital and the Institute of Living, which is on the campus of Harvard Hospital. They are recorded involved with the pattern of predicate acts with houses next to schools that involve way worse than just drugs and sexual crimes and passion crimes associated with that. Pretended they have real motivations, natures, needs, interests to hide things and to hide with lie in backgrounds in conjunction while the police departments hide, and then they start making all different Facebook pages to obfuscate. Then they start changing articles a little and making they have all the different aspects of WFSB involved with their wire crimes with the people that answer the phone. Sick passions and emotions, forcing sustained for years, child abuses. As people who just so happen to, who went to my schools, who were in the background conversations. I never had a conversation with them in my life. They'll tell you they're pretending passions and emotions based on what other people told them. All exceptions in nature are in demonstration of the same thing. As people are also self-recorded themselves offensively preventing me free speech by attaching me and others around me to fake words, fake sequence relationships, fake natures of ties to themselves and to others. So we're going to have to address, we're going to have to have federal stewardships of our states, because this is interstate and this is international. Other countries have the same exact problem, /S. Sickly the opinions of everybody. Democracy. They have physical delusions recorded with democracy. In other words, you have to examine how they don't follow mandated law, how they attach people to fake words, regular citizens, and leaders sickly, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Where and how. So they also have, through time, people from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Wethersfield interbranch crimes on and off campuses with kids, child abuses, and that are also, it was extended so long, they also perfected that as roles with elderly abuses. It also perfected it with their uses of needs to use crimes and our uses of needs to use crimes. Criminally foreign influence, or they hurt you. The identity thefts and fraud styles are manifest in relationship to their quality of fact treatments with every topic before the news. One thing that locations, areas, and states where everyone's a victim, predator though, but where everyone's a victim, they're needing to blame it on, where they're victim predators, they need to blame it on other things, others and or ourselves, where and how they are naive. quality of fact treatment, quality of premise treatments, sequence treatments, identity treatments, time treatments, value treatments. Where and how Native Americans are a hyper value that they can't voice increasingly without having to entertain a lead up to that, which can't get to that. You have to admit, in other words, Native Americans will tell you we have to change, we have to do something. That everyone misses how they're being tricked to use words like environment. Some of the Native Americans will be able to know that by now. So if you put it as nature, nature reveals itself. It has a relationship to positive and negative simultaneously, just like you do, as a hyperpositive. Just like all parts of your body are individual identities with a semi-nature relationship to your complete identity, you have a semi-nature relationship to the species, one body, that is your own. Stronger than any group. It's any classification of a group. See, that phrase, white supremacy, consolidates a quality of fact treatment nature. The Native Americans, many are white. Some it's mixed. Some black, per your guys' language. Leaders tell us, in other words, there is no standard because no one's speaking for the nature of the law and the other was already pretended. And there are already increasing means to demonstrate that. So they increasingly self-value how criminal insidious natures of locations, areas, and states, formal fact treatments were already criminally foreign influenced. So they increasingly self-value how the identity thefts and frauds against James Madison's plan in nature and against George Washington's plan in nature, they don't defend. They say, oh, George Washington owned slaves. That's because they left out where and how they were all slaves. Sickly distinctly. If they spoke up about it, they would have been dead slaves. Even our founding parents, even the founding parents of the other countries, our founding species parents, our counter, what do we have to call it, parents? We call it, in other words, call it what you want. Already locations, areas, and states had been sustained involvements with and as identity ground, identity treatments of locations, of areas, names, states, even though they were colonies. We are this increasing state /S, and I tell it best. Boxing, because I tell no lies. I don't value truths used for lies. All rise. So in other words, Weathersfield interbranch, switched and forged names, the courts, various natures of courts and their family members are recorded at locations themselves. And through instances they recorded pretending other, falsified police reports, that are also switching names. This also records the executive branch, former director of the FBI, military police, foreign military, leading up to and in the World Trade Center. So there are people near Webb School and Weathersfield associated with some foreign and domestic military families who are also involved with medicines and medical racketeering and identity thefts and frauds. And offensive evidence reception crimes, worse than war crimes. And it has something to do with all along Church Street and all Old Weathersfield. Then you take a right on Main Street and you go all the way from there onto Wells Road straight up to CCSU in New Britain. Now the corner of Walker Hill and of Wells Road has something to do with corruption with people with the military of various, and with people that had my name used with their parents and other people associated with them and themselves through criminal foreign influences as their roles, with a pattern of falsified police reports that were paralleled by wire crimes and mail crimes and untimely death rolls and uses of them, and which also shows the way that, you know, they're threatening. It's abuse of each people's age that makes them self-evaluate. Per the uses of the confessions, for example, per the uses of arrays, they have the white power people and the black people involved with the identity thefts, frauds, clicks, with the medicines racketeering, and they're explaining, they're showing kids how they need to hide live aggressions from grammar school, where the people who are really the most against and hurting black people are the ones with their arms around them in backgrounds, because they're using them for federal crimes with the databases at schools, interbranch, and at private locations privately, at where people are going to walk, like parks, like locations next to parks, where people are going to drive by, like corners of streets, used to lock people's sense and sensibilities, self-valuing where and how what they call the intelligence community is criminally foreign influenced, and where differentially, increasingly though, and where that is not true, their delusions rot, and where that and that's increasingly too. So they increasingly self-value, sense and sensibilities that are collusion with all locations, areas, and states, with those narratives where people are preventing offensively each age of correlation nature, demonstration of how to speak for and to understand the nature of the law. You have to go by the nature of why and how we are. One volume as a species and one as an individual. And so and how we are grouped only for the value of discerning hyper positive through that or not, or as hyper negative, which is forced from here, Leith of Hadith, per force space nature transfer, per nature theory by Anthony Waugh. Thank you.